Hi YouTube and welcome to Airsoft Sense with me, Andy. Right, so what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about modifications, or let's say performance mods for your guns. Now, when you are first getting into Airsoft, you go to the shop, you buy your gun, you go and take it to your first game, or a couple of games, and you find that other people have an advantage over you. And you know, we're all very competitive and we want to enjoy the game that we're playing. And I did when I first started playing. I found that I didn't have the exact same range as them, or that I couldn't hit them as accurate as they could hit me. And it's just because after the game, after talking to these people, they've been running a multitude different types of modifications. So how can I explain the modifications to you and will be viable? So all the modifications in the gun will improve the gun slightly. Some modifications are sort of built more to for looks than actual improvement. There is only one part I can actually see in the gun, that is that. So let's have a look at pricings. Let's look at whether what you would feel that you'd need to do, because everybody has a different technical prowess. Some people just aren't very good at taking things apart, and there are good plenty of airsoft shops out there that have techs that work for them that will be able to do this service for you. But then you got to also remember of the additional cost that they're going to charge you for doing it. So doing things on your own will be cheaper, but then if you break it, then it's up to you. It's your own problem. So let's have a look at what we've got inside the gun. So we'll start from the front. So on the front end of the gun, you are looking at a inner barrel. So the inner barrel that comes in standard is just a 6.07mm barrel. It's made of brass. It's good, it does its job. The problem is because it's such a large tolerance around the BB, you will lose air pressure, which will reduce the FPS. So you can replace these with stainless steel ones. There are many manufacturers out there. They do range between £19 to £32 in price. But what do you get? Well, there is 3 other options they give you. So it's 6.03 to 6.01. Now, normally on most rifles, you will run 03 to 02. If you're running sniper rifles or you're DMRing your gun, then 6.01 will give you that really nice pinpoint accuracy. But that is entirely up to you. With coinciding with the barrel, if you are upgrading the barrel, then it makes sense to upgrade the bucking. Standard buckings are thinner. The material isn't as good as aftermarket ones. So aftermarket ones, I think Maple Leaf and Prometheus do them. They have various angles, so speak to your local tech who will advise you what's the best degree angle to suit your gun. And these will just be placed over the end of the new inner barrels. And these are priced around £7 to £10, depending on the store. So it's not major expensive, and it's good that when you are doing the barrel that you do these at the same time. Then from that you have the hop-up. Now, most standard hop-ups in guns that are just plastic, especially on the cheap models, sort of mid-range price guns, around the 200 up mark, then you are looking at having steel hop-ups inside those guns. I have still seen some with plastic on more expensive guns, but predominantly steel hop-ups are very good. They're good endurance. But nothing will ever beat a CNC hop-up. On my gun I run a Max Pro CNC. It's a fantastic piece of kit. It comes with a tracer built in, which you can remove. It also has, as standard out the box, it's R-hopped, but you can change it to flat hop or just standardize it entirely. A really cool piece of kit. These are expensive though. They range between £50 and £75. They can be pricey, but you know what? It was the most best buy I ever put into the gun. It really was. It really transformed that gun. So these three parts that we just spoke about, they're fairly easy to remove from the gun. Your competence will range on whether you want to start dabbling with taking these bits apart, but this is up to you. There are videos out there on YouTube, and I've done videos on it myself, so it's up to you on what you want to do, as far as either you get a tech involved or you do it on yourself. So from the front of the gun, let's have a look at the center, where we have the gearbox. So the gearbox is made up of lots of parts. You have the gearbox housing, which you can change for an aftermarket CNC gearbox housing, which is fine. You don't really need it, only unless you're looking at pushing extremely high torque, so very fast full auto settings, then yeah, it'd be advisable to do that. But predominantly, if you are just looking to get a bit of an improvement of the gun, it's an unnecessary expense. Unless you want to go crazy with it, then go crazy with it. These are sort of around the £100 mark to buy. They're good, and they look good, but nobody's really going to see it because it's inside the gun. So inside the gearbox housing, we have more parts. So you have the selector plate. They do aftermarket selector plates. You don't need to change them. It's fine. The standard one's fine. The same thing with the tappet plate. Unless you have a very cheap gun that you just bought, then yeah, you will probably want to switch the tappet plate. But on sort of £200 plus Ranger guns, then yeah, the tappet plate will be fine. You don't really need to replace that whatsoever. But what attached is to the tappet plate can be changed, which is the nozzle. Machine CNC nozzles are good buy. It'll allow it to ensure a good seal around the end of the cylinder head. So that is really a good improvement. So that is really a decent buy. They're very cheap. I think they're around £10 to buy an aftermarket CNC nozzle. They're very easy to put in. However, you still got to take the gearbox apart. So if you feel that you have enough savvy to take a gearbox apart without worrying yourself, then do that. Again, there are techs out there that can do this for you. So that's quite good. Coinciding with the nozzle, you have the cylinder head, like I said. So aftermarket cylinder heads, opposed to standard ones, they have 2 O-rings, whereas the standard one will have 1 O-ring, which again gives you a better seal. They're made out of CNC billet aluminium, which is better endurance than the standard plastic ones that you get. So they are a good buy. Again, you're not looking at spending mega money on these. These are around £17. That for a new Pro, it's fantastic. It exactly does what you need it to do. And with the nozzle with it, really do make a massive improvement. It just improves the efficiency of the gun. So from the cylinder head, you go look at the cylinder. Now, do aftermarket cylinders. A modification that's not necessarily need to be done because the tolerances that they're made of. The standard cylinder out any gun will be just the same as any aftermarket one. The only difference is that the aftermarket ones look, nicer. Again, if nobody sees the interior gun, then I find that it's unnecessary expense. But if you want to go all out and upgrade your gun completely, then do it. So from the cylinder, we'll look inside the cylinder. So you have the piston and piston head. These are 2 good things to replace. The piston head, you can get CNC billet aluminium again, which are much more durable. I think the recesses in them are a little bit bigger, so the O-rings are a little bit bigger. Again, will give you a good seal, but that would be useless unless you put a nice layer of silicone grease around them to ensure that you get a good seal. The actual piston itself, yes, if you go for cheaper guns, then they will come with like the first 4 or 5 teeth of steel and the rest of plastic. they're not great. They really aren't great. That'd be like a must to change that for full steel teeth. A new Pro will do these for you. Again, they're not very expensive, easy to go in. Again, if you don't feel comfortable in that, get your local tech to do that for you. Then looking south to that, we now have the gears. So the gears, cheaper guns will run plastic. They won't last you very long. They aren't very good. You really want to change them as soon as you possibly can, because you're going to be using that gun day in, day out, and over time, the plastic gears aren't very good. They will break down. So you want to look at changing these for steel. Now, there are lots out there. There's 19 to 1, 13 to 1. I know Siege Tech do 10 to 1. Some crazy gear sets out there that will allow you to run extremely high speed, full auto. There are a lot of things to consider if you are doing this. Again, it's up to you and what kind of games you are playing. If in some sites don't necessarily let you only run in semi-auto, then this is kind of a mod that you're not going to be able to utilize. Just to show off at the beginning and the end of most matches, but during the match you won't be able to use it. So you have to tailor make these modifications to suit yourself. So upgrading these gears, you have to consider another thing, and this is quite important. So if you are looking at upgrading these gears, you need to consider a high torque motor. The standard motors don't like the higher torque load on them, so they will overheat and they will burn out. So I would recommend changing these. There's lots of high torque motors out there on the market. They do price range between, I think, 30 to 120 pounds. I think the most expensive is the Tokyo Marui high torque motor. They're very good. They can handle the upgrade of the gears. The other issue I found with upgrading your gears, another must upgrade that you need to have is to install a MOSFET. So your mechanical switches in these guns are standard, which is fine, but these do not monitor gear positioning. So I've had in the past where I've upgraded the gears and kept a standard mechanical switch in there, and it's caused a whole lot of problems, misfeeding. The gears generally don't like it, so putting a MOSFET in is ideal to do that. It also gives you a lot of customization. You can set the trigger sensitivity. You can change to do 3-5 burst fire. It can have safety limits on there, so if you run full auto, it'll only do up to 30 rounds and it will cut itself. So it's very cool to have a MOSFET in there. They can be expensive, but you can buy the cheap ones around the £50 mark, and they range all the way up to £140. In my rifle, I run a Gate Titan version 2 rear wired, which is it is the shelf queen of them all. It really is fantastic. It connects to your phone. You can change the settings on the go with it. It's a very cool piece of kit. But all MOSFETs are generally quite good. They will just allow the protection of the upgraded gears that you have in the gun. So if we go back to the top of the gun, behind the piston, we have the spring. Now, standard springs out of the box will do the job, but aftermarket springs are better. There are a slightly thicker gauge of steel, so they're more endurable. They will last longer, whereas the usual ones that you have in there will lose their strength over time. You can have them so they hit a better FPS. Now, what you've got to consider is when you do buy one of these, they are very powerful, and they will be hitting beyond the acceptable limits of the sight. So you will be looking to around 360, 370 FPS, and so Ideally, when you have these installed, you want to stick that gun in full auto and run about 600 rounds through it, and that will allow the spring to bed in, and it will reduce it to a legal and acceptable level for all UK sites. So you have to bear that in mind when you put this in. Don't just put the spring in, turn up on the site and go, yes, this is going to be fine. No, you're probably not going to be allowed to use the gun. But very good mod. All springs are £10, very cheap and an easy mod to do. Certain guns, they are a fixed gearbox, so that the spring, you have to take the gearbox apart to take the spring out. But there are other makes like Ethereum out there that will do a quick release screw, which is on the inside of the stock tube, which will allow you to take the spring in and out very easily. So that's kind of cool. And that is a good sound upgrade. So I think we've covered pretty much everything in the gun. I could talk about triggers, speed triggers. Speed triggers aren't very, well, they don't really matter too much on rifles. They're more on pistols, where they have a grub screw in the trigger, which will allow you to fine set that trigger so that you don't need to apply much pressure on the trigger for it to fire the gun. But these are more for pistols. They do look good. They are blingy. They do look nice on the rifles. But this then comes down to the improvement of the gun, or an improvement for the gun for you, because you've got to feel comfortable holding that gun, and if you find that trigger is comfortable and you're more effective using that particular type of trigger, then yeah, you could say that's a mod for a performance for yourself more than a performance for the gun initially. So all these mods together will produce a very good and competitive gun, better than some more expensive ones out there. The most expensive, you're looking around the £1,000 mark for guns, they have all these parts in already. Now you have to think, okay, so if we add all these parts up plus labour plus the price of the gun, is it a better idea to buy a mid-range gun and fully upgrade it? Yeah, it's not too bad. But then you got to look out in the market, because there are guns out in the market that will have all these upgrades and they probably will beat it in price. So be very smart when you're out there buying. And that pretty much completes everything that you can really do to the interior of your guns. So thank you for watching this episode. I will be doing another one to follow, which will be covering exterior accessories. So we can be looking at silencers, tracers, lasers, optics, things like that. But that'll be on my next video. So thank you everybody, and have yourself a great day.